This is the Microsoft Cloud Show, episode 105, where we're going to catch up on the news from the Microsoft Connect event, recorded live November 24th, 2015. Welcome to the Microsoft Cloud Show, the only place to stay up to date on everything going on in the Microsoft Cloud world, including Windows Azure, Office 365, SharePoint, Exchange, Lync, and related technologies. Just the information, no marketing, no BS. I'm Chris Johnson.
And I'm Andrew Call.
And we're just two dudes telling you how we see it. What's going on, AC?
Nothing much, man. How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's a dreary Seattle day, though, I've got to say.
Oh, it's a sunny, nice and cool Florida day.
Excellent. So what's been going on in your world?
So last week I did the SP Live or VS Live conference down in Orlando. It was a good show, had a really good audience. I was really pumped up. We got the SharePoint side where we were the smallest of all of the tracks, and we bumped up our attendance by 50%. So we were the second from the smallest of all the conferences. But we had a lot of the same people that had been there from previous years, and it was really good. So it was a little tricky, though, because we were there the same week that the Microsoft Connect conference was going on, or Connect. I should call it an event because it was all...
An event, yeah, mostly online, right?
Yeah, mostly online. That's what we're going to talk about today, but it was a little tricky because there were some announcements that were being made while we were at the show that were related to what we were talking about. So specifically, one very big one, I did a whole workshop and had half my workshop about the Office 365 APIs and the Unified API. And I had to just give him a big wink, just saying, watch later this week.
Yeah, awkward timing.
Yeah, so it was all good, though. It's all good. How are you?
Very well. Yeah, no, doing great. Thank you. We're getting underway with some development. We've got our sprints underway, and we're sort of getting a bit more rigor about our dev process and things of what we're doing. So things are all heading in the right direction, and now we're sort of knuckling down and starting to build some product. So so we will get there. But it's also I'm trying to hire some folks. I'm trying to hire a mobile developer. So if there's anybody listening that's in the Seattle area or in Washington area and knows Xamarin or Objective-C or Swift, then let me know.
In the same boat, too. If anybody's interested in being an advertiser for the podcast or a sponsor for the podcast, please reach out to us. Just go to the MicrosoftCloudShow.com site and go to the contact page and just send us a note. We'll get back to you. We've got some stuff kind of put together, but would love to have some help in having some sponsors and advertisers to help us offset the costs of putting on the show. Yeah,
absolutely, and help get your name and brand out there.
Yeah, I'm totally jealous that you're able to start working on this stuff. I know that I got something I'm going to work on that's kind of similar architecture that what you're doing in a couple months, but on a project right now that I got to work on for the next month or two or three. So I'm just going to be a voyeur into what you guys are working on. So
you're into it when you wake up at 2:00 in the morning and you're like, yeah, I wonder if I'm doing my queuing quite right there, and thinking about your distributed messaging between all your different components, and so that's what I'm up at night thinking about.
Cool. That's cool. Yeah. Hey, it's now been about a week and a half since I got the Surface Pro 4.
Oh yeah, how's that going?
Man, that's a really nice device. So I got the i5, 256 gig, 8 gigs of RAM, and I have. Again, this is not my primary machine. It could be. I'm pretty impressed with the performance, especially for the price, but very impressed with the performance. It's not lagged or anything on me yet. But it's I got Visual Studio 2013, Visual Studio 2015, Office 2016 on it, syncing a bunch of files between Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive for Business, doing some dev on it. Got 2 instances of Visual Studio open right now, running just fine. I actually found it last week to be performing better than the VM I have on my MacBook Pro Windows 10 machine. It was performing really well to the point where I gave up trying to present from my MacBook Pro when I was doing Visual Studio and just use my Surface. So I was pretty pumped about that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Looks like a slick device, yeah.
It is. I walked around with it in my bag the whole time and never felt like my bag never felt heavy. So I love the form factor on it. I love the pen. Man, the pen's really slick. So much so, yeah, and I've got to deal with the whole converting from Evernote to OneNote. I think I'm going to do it, but it's going to be not a short process because nobody's made this easy.
Yeah, the migration, huh? We were talking about that the other day. If anybody knows of a little code snippet or migration tool that gets from Evernote to OneNote, that would be a pretty sweet utility.
Let me add to that. So there are tools like that out there, and I've seen them, but the problem is that every single one uses, so in Evernote, the biggest difference in Evernote and OneNote is that OneNote has the concept of notebooks, section groups, sections, pages, subpages. And the problem that I have over in Evernote is that Evernote's like you have a notebook and then you have just a boatload of notes and they're organized via tags.
Yeah.
And all those import things, when they import them, each tag shows up as a separate section. And if you use tags the way you're supposed to use tags in Evernote,
you still have lots of them.
Yeah, I did one import over and I just had a ridiculous number of sections. So I need to
you need a mapping between tags and sections, right?
It's funny you say that. If anybody is interested in this, I'm going to be, by the time this episode goes live, go find me on Twitter. That's just at Andrew Connell. Look in my history and you will see a job that I'm going to post on Upwork, which is the new version of Odesk, for a Node.js script where someone will talk to the Evernote API and we'll do a complete dump of my tags in Evernote in a hierarchical JSON format. And then I'm going to go through and massage that to say, here's the way I want it to look when I'm done. And so that I can then have somebody else write another script that will, or I write it, that will create all the stuff in the OneNote API, but using my little migration kind of path thing set up there. So could turn into a cool little product, but at least if somebody wants to, a couple extra bucks over the holidays, I got a job for you. I don't have time to do it, but I'm willing to pay.
I'm sure that would be very helpful to lots of people.
Yeah.
Hey, so we've got some news to get through.
We do. Last week was a big week.
Yeah, it was a big week. For those who weren't watching last week, the Microsoft Connect 2015, it was a developer-focused event run by Microsoft, mostly online. There was some in-person event in New York, but not big, more sort of press and a few invited customers, I should say. But if you want to go take a look, it was all online as well, and I tuned in or watched the streams for the keynotes and things at connect2015.visualstudio.com. That will take you to the correct place. And all the videos are up and online, but it's a developer-focused event. They talked about Office, they talked about Azure, they talked about Visual Studio, talked about Visual Studio Code, they talked about cloud development in general, a whole bunch of stuff going on ASP.NET and so forth, the dev tools and the languages and things. And we're going to cover some of that news today. But if you want, go take a look at the videos. They're really, just watch the keynotes if you want the overviews. It seemed like a pretty good event.
Yeah, I was impressed with it. I did not get to watch it live because I was co-chair at this conference down in Orlando, and I was in a lot of the sessions. So I had the sessions running, but they were muted, so I could see what was being announced, but I couldn't really hear what was being said. I downloaded a bunch of the videos. And actually, on my drive back from Orlando to Jacksonville, I don't tell anybody. I don't think anybody's listening to this, but I put them on my Surface and then connected my Surface via Bluetooth to the car and played it, listened to the keynotes and stuff on the way back at like Scott Guthrie at 1.5 speed.
That's awesome. Why don't tell anybody? It seems like a perfect time to listen.
Well, because I did have the video and I was watching some of the stuff that was going on. So
were you driving hands-free and like eating your lunch and having a coffee at the same time, AC?
One of the above.
Okay, so you were hands-free and with coffee.
I will, but I did have a bad incident where I was going through construction, and I don't know what hit me. I believe it's a rock, but I had a rock hit the windshield and cracked the windshield of my Tesla. So,
oh, dude, that sucks.
Yeah, so I got a guy showing up on Friday hoping to fix it or to repair it so I don't have to get the whole thing replaced. But I can tell you that auto steer runs just fine after being hit by a rock.
Classic.
Yeah, but hey, you know what I thought was so cool about this? I did want to just say this one thing about the Connect event. You and I have kind of mused about this a little bit, but I do like this new style of event that Microsoft is doing where there's a virtual bit and then there's a bunch of things already recorded and they have like little one-on-one kind of roundtable interviews and stuff. So I really like the format of this event.
Yeah.
But, there was something that really stood out to me. I mean, you go back a year and a half, and if you would have told me the following, I would have said you're full of shit. So one bit to kind of follow up on this, but when Scott Guthrie is up on stage, he invites Anders Helsberg up on stage to talk about Visual Studio Code, where they then turn around and go open source Visual Studio Code, but then they invite, oh boy, I always mess up her title. She's basically the chief developer evangelist marketing person for Angular at Google, Jules Kremer. Invite her up on stage. She's talking about the whole thing and how Google's Angular team uses code to do all of their development for Angular, and they're using TypeScript. I mean, you've got Scott Guthrie bringing up the guy that started TypeScript, talking about a new editor of Visual Studio that they open sourced up on stage, bringing Google out on stage with them at a Microsoft event, who's talking about how great TypeScript and Visual Studio Code is and how great that partnership is, and they walk off the stage. I would have told you were full of shit that was going to happen a year and a half ago.
Yeah, that's true.
And we had a question at the panel, at the closing panel for the live conference down in Orlando, and someone asked, what do you see SQL Server being cross-platform one day? And I mean, I would have always said, no, there's no way in hell. But now I'm like, you know what? I put nothing beyond Microsoft, what Microsoft is going to do right now. I'm pretty impressed with the way they're going and how open they are.
I would say that would be the most prominent highlight for me was the open sourcing of Visual Studio Code. I think a close second was the news with the Microsoft Graph API that we'll get into in a second. But I thought it was very nicely done. I just love the on-demand aspects to it and being able to consume them on your own schedule.
Yeah, I do too. I love the way they did that.
So should we dig into some of the news?
Yeah, what do you want to jump on first?
Why don't we kick off with the Graph, the Microsoft Graph stuff, since that's kind of in our wheelhouse, or closest to our wheelhouse, I guess.
Love it. What is the Graph? I haven't heard of this before.
Yeah, well, the Graph, man, who knows? It's an enigma. No, I'm kidding. So the Microsoft Graph is, previously it was called the Office 365 Unified API. And there's actually a really long history behind that name, and it wasn't a name that we wanted to. This was when I was at Microsoft. We didn't actually want to call it the Unified API, but we couldn't get consensus across Microsoft to call it the Microsoft Graph in time for build earlier this year. And so it got called the Office 365 Unified API, which was just kind of a ridiculous mouthful, really. But anyway, so it's been rebranded the Microsoft Graph. And the reason it's the Microsoft Graph is that it's not just Office 365 APIs, but it includes things from other products like Azure AD, for example. And so the idea is it's the one-stop shop API that you'll be able to go at graph.microsoft.com to go and get access to all of the data and the things inside Microsoft Cloud Services. So whether you want to query people from Azure AD, for example, or tasks from Office 365, or files from in OneDrive, or notes, like you were saying, in OneNote, that's where you go get these new APIs. And it's super easy to consume. It's one endpoint, one OAuth, authentication and authorization flow, and then a bunch of different calls. And they've got some cool tools. They've got the Graph Explorer, which is like an online web application that you can use to surf around and cruise around and get responses back from the Graph API and see what comes back. And you don't have to go build out a whole bunch of code to try it out. And the nicest bit, and huge credit to the team on this, but the docs are better than anything Microsoft's produced in the past, I believe. I'm gonna piggyback on what you said about the docs, but I'm gonna go even further with that. This is the best. It's the best documentation site I've seen. Not just Microsoft, but it's the best documentation site that I've seen across the board. I had a chance to see a little bit, see them a little early, and gave them a bunch of feedback. There's a lot of things that I would love to see them do with the doc site. So like today, we see things like where there's an endpoint on it. Well, I guess first, if you're interested in going and seeing about the Graph, it's graph.microsoft.io. The actual endpoint is graph.microsoft.com. If you hit that in the browser, it redirects you to the .io site.
Yeah, so graph.microsoft.com or .io. The biggest thing for me is that all these different endpoints we had before, one for mail, one for calendar, one for contacts, discovery service, all that stuff, all of it's now in one spot, which that's a single auth token that you can use to hit everything. Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah, my developers were looking at me like I was some sort of cuckoo crazy person when I was like talking to them about the discovery service and authenticating against different, or getting tokens for different endpoints, and having to manage multiple different tokens for multiple different endpoints. And it was just a mess, right? It was hard, much harder than it should be. If
nobody's played with this, just as a bit of an analogy here, the way I like to describe it to people is that the way we had it before was lots of little brick and mortar stores all scattered around the city, and you had to go open up the yellow pages. That was the discovery service telling you where to go. Yeah. Now you basically go to the mall and everything's under one roof. So the OAuth token was a big piece, but the docs, I love the way that they've done the docs. I got to give massive credit to Rob Howard's team and Yena Arenas at Microsoft that did a phenomenal job with this. I know Yena was big time on the docs.
Yeah,
I would love to see them. There's two different sections on the docs site where one is like the V1 endpoint and then one's the V beta endpoint, so you can see what's coming. I'd like to see those merged together with a little toggle that says, show me the stuff that's in beta, or show me the stuff, or hide or show the stuff that's in beta, because right now I got to jump between two to see what's in beta and what is in V1. But I'd like to have like a thing to say, add the beta stuff and like make it yellow or give it a yellow background or something that makes it stand out that, hey, be careful with playing with this.
Yeah. Actually, I blogged yesterday a little post called Microsoft Graph and What's Changing. And what I've started to do is take a dump of the metadata, the dollar metadata file, and I stuck it in GitHub, and I'm going to do it periodically and commit. Every time I see it change, I'm going to take a copy of it, or maybe I'll do it on a timed process and drop it in GitHub, and so you can diff between the previous version and the current version. And right now there's just two commits I've got in there, one for the beta and one for the V1, and it shows the difference between in the dollar metadata file, and it's just so I can have a poke through and see what's in the dump more easily.
You should talking about your dump quite a bit here. This is supposed to be a clean podcast, but I will say,
sorry, buddy.
We should have taled more because I actually had a timed process that did that every Monday and that actually dropped the files and committed it into a GitHub repo, private GitHub repo, so I could see the differences. I actually blew all that away just recently.
Oh, no.
I should have given it to you. I was doing the exact same thing. I've had talks with them. I talked with some of the guys on the engineering side, just like, this is something that you could easily automate. This is the change log that so many people have been asking for so long. You could easily automate this. And
I mean, it's not bulletproof, right? Because they move things around in the metadata file, so that's not 100% bulletproof. And I know they're working on a change log stuff for developers, so we'll hopefully have a better way to track this stuff going forward.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree. It's one of those. You know what really? Here's one of the things that kind of sucks about the graph. Is one of those things to me that is conceptually, it's very simple. You go from a complicated world to saying it's so much simpler now, but really the announcement is like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But it really is impactful. It's something very, very simple that we can to describe to someone, but the work that went on behind it,
huge,
that they did was tremendous, and the impact that it's going to have for us as developers, not just in Office 365, but you imagine where this kind of goes from here. I mean, imagine let's look at the consumer aspect to it. Imagine things from like Xbox Live, or imagine things from the health site. There's a ton of places that Microsoft can go with this. So it's very, very cool. Very cool. Very impressive.
I think it sets a great precedent, and hopefully more and more will get added to it.
Yeah.
It's got nice versioning too. Hooray!
It does. It'd be cool. It'd be cool to see Google do the same kind of a thing.
Right.
Because I mean, a lot of people have similar setup in Google where you got your mail over there, you got your calendar, you got tasks, you got all kinds of stuff in there. And Google properties. So, I mean, Google's the other one that just seems natural to make this kind of a move. The other companies don't really, I mean, Apple as well, but Apple just doesn't work like that to me. They're not going to open an API to your data. So
yeah, I thought that was, for me personally, because I work on this stuff, like this was probably the most exciting announcement for me. The graph going generally available and becoming a bit more stable with the V1 API at least. There's a beta endpoint, which they'll keep upgrading and changing and adding things to going forward, but at least V1 should stay stable. So that is what I'm going to be using.
That was your big thing, huh?
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about.
The other big thing I thought was pretty impressive was around Visual Studio Code.
Oh, yeah. This was the biggie from a big song and dance on the internet point of view, at least anyway.
Well, you could tell that Microsoft was making some waves because, I mean, they had the same thing at Build this past year, and they had this last week, where I believe like I counted at one point, 5 of the top 7 or 8 links on Hacker News were coming from this event, coming from Connect. And so for me, the big piece was Visual Studio Code. Now, they made a few announcements with this. First of all, they went to an official beta release, which, I mean, the product was pretty tight anyway. I never felt like I was not in an RTM version of the product or, production instance of it. But we're now at version 0.10. And the 2 really big things that they did were, one was they open sourced it. So if you go to github.com/Microsoft/VS Code, you can see the repo for where they're doing all the work and taking pull requests and everything. That was one big one. The other really big thing that they did is they also added in or published their API and a marketplace for extensibility or extensions in Visual Studio Code. So I've already pulled a couple things down, a couple different packages down in my instance. Here's some of the ones that I got that I absolutely love. So like TS lint is in there. So linting your TypeScript is right out of the box inside VS Code. There's also one for open in GitHub. I like this one. So if you have a project in GitHub and you've cloned it local and you're making changes to it, when you're on a line, you could tell it to open it up in GitHub, and it takes you straight to the line for the same source code file up in GitHub. So you can grab that URL and you can copy and paste it to someone so they can see the code that you're working on.
That's nice.
There's also one for like a Travis CI status where you can see when you go through and push it, you can see the Travis kind of running like it would be a build, and you can see where if your build is green or passed or whatever. The one that I love, though, is adding JS.comments. So if I'm working in a JavaScript or a TypeScript file, if I select the prototype for a function and I say add the JS.comments, if I've already put the types in there for TypeScript, it'll do all the parameters for me. It'll do the types. It'll do the actual thing, the comment for me, everything in there. So I just have to fill in, here's the description of the function, here's the description of all the different parameters, and here's the description of what it returns. Love it.
What add-in is that?
It's called add.js.comments.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'll take a look at that.
It's by Steven CL, I think is the guy's name. So it adds all the param and return tags for selected function signatures in JavaScript and TypeScript.
Very cool. Gosh, that's really cool. The open sourcing thing is, I was a little mixed on it. I was like, is this a big deal? And then I went and talked to my devs about it, and they're like, it's not so much that we want to see the code, it's that we want to know that it's there if we need to. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, one of them said, it's helpful if something's going wrong to be able to go look at it and go, is it me or something I'm doing? Or is there a bug? And if so, they can put an issue in. For a lot of these devs, like Microsoft's this black box that they don't know how to talk to. And if there's a GitHub project with an issues list, they know how to talk to them. They go put an issue in and have a dialogue, right? Mm. And so the open sourcing aspect of it for them is more like a confidence thing and a transparency thing more than I want to download all the code and build it myself.
Yeah, to me, it's Microsoft saying a couple things. One, for my takeaway, aside from what your dev said, it's Microsoft saying, quote, we're in this with you.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of like I feel more like I'm connected closer to the team. And so I can actually tell them when something's not working, I can go in and look at it.
Right.
It's also a killer code sample for an enterprise TypeScript project. So if you want to see how they do build and all that kind of stuff, great example so you can compare it to what you do and say, this either works for me or doesn't work for me, but there's another way to do it.
Right.
I also like the ability to say when something is not working that I have the ability to go in and maybe help them or put a post in there where something's wrong. But the cool thing is, here's a good example of open source. This didn't happen with the VS Code team, but it happened with the TypeScript team. TypeScript was being done open source, and an independent guy had an idea where in TypeScript back in the pre 1.4 days, when you created like type definitions and when you had other TypeScript files, if you wanted to reference them within the file that you're currently in, you had to add those triple slash comments with a reference XML tag to say, essentially, go import that TypeScript file into this one so that I can get the IntelliSense and auto-completion and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And a guy said, well, wouldn't it be nice if we had a file that lived at the root of my TypeScript project called tsconfig.json that the TypeScript compiler could look at and automatically import all the TypeScript files and all the type definition files. And he essentially wrote the spec for it. And the TypeScript team's like, oh, badass idea. We're going to put that in the product.
That's cool.
Or put that in TypeScript. So that came from the community that did not come from the Microsoft side. The Microsoft guys built it, but the idea came from outside. So, and it's cool. You watch the entire spec proposal and stuff in an issue in TypeScript repository. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's really nice.
I really like it. So, and if somebody may go crazy and say, we're going to make our own version of Visual Studio Code for our organization that follows specific rules. And so they can fork it and they can make their own changes. It's a cool way to do it. So,
yeah, that's super slick. Super slick. I think it made a lot of news and there's a lot of goodwill there. And it's a great tool. I'm using it every day and I'm liking it more and more. And the extensions, I think, or the add-ins or whatever they call them, that's pretty sort of opens up the world to all sorts of different stuff.
Yeah, talk about a throwback. I loved seeing Anders up there, and he added an extension for Pascal. I was like, that was the first language that I learned when I was in high school. That was Turbo Pascal.
Turbo Pascal on a Mac.
He had Turbo Pascal on a Mac in VS Code, opened it up, it was just gray text, and then he added the extension, and he got colorization. I was like, Oh my God, I got to go try that.
Yeah, exactly. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah. So, all right, what's next for you?
Well, I've got some other articles, not necessarily related to Connect, but definitely related in GitHub. So Jeff Wilcox posted about from 20 to 2,000 engineers on GitHub, Azure GitHub, and our open source portal. And so for those who are using GitHub in a business setting or in a big, large team setting, you'll know that the administrative kind of overhead of adding people and managing a GitHub set of organizations and repositories is can be a bit tricky. So what Microsoft have done is built a portal that helps them manage that process. And they recently published the source to that on GitHub. So it does things like, new users coming into an organization, requesting access to certain organizations and repos, and getting certain rights in GitHub, and they sort of automate all of that with the GitHub API and things like that. And it all runs in Azure, obviously, since it was the Azure team that built it. But it really just helps manage large teams. And if you get above, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 people, it kind of gets a bit of a pain to have somebody who's got admin rights, who can go in and add and remove users when people join and leave the company and so forth. And so this portal kind of helps with all of that.
Yeah, I thought this is a fantastic article. I didn't even call it an article. This is almost a tome. It was a huge post, but I thought he made a really good point, is that GitHub has full support for handling thousands of users within an organization or multiple organizations. The UI, though, in GitHub is really not designed for a company like Microsoft. It's designed for like small business. It's designed for smaller teams of like maybe 15 people or less or 20 people or less, and managing all that stuff. But I love the way that they built this portal or service that would sit on top of it. And it's pretty slick how anybody can really go take this portal that they created. They could pull it down and wire it up to their own organization. So I thought that was really cool. I mean, I can see this as closely as I work with the Office Dev Group. I can totally see them being able to take advantage of something like this too, because I know that it's a challenge to manage that stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially when you've got multiple organizations in GitHub as well. Then you've got when somebody goes away on holiday, who's the admin, who can add and remove people, and all that sort of stuff, and you start losing control of it. So I just thought it was really slick that it was an internal tool that they've obviously scrubbed up and got ready, and now put the source out there for others to take advantage of.
Yeah, totally agree.
I wouldn't be surprised if GitHub offers something like this in the future, or takes this and decides to build something like that in the future for big enterprises.
Sure seems like an extra service offering that a company could offer. They could sell it as a package thing to sitting on top of GitHub. So I know some people are already doing stuff like this to have like certain things overlaid on top of the issues and making issues more like Kanban boards and stuff like that with GitHub. But yeah, cool opportunity there.
Yeah, definitely.
There's one thing that I wanted to call out too that I thought was really interesting was during one of the first keynote at the Connect show. I think his name is Donovan Brown from Microsoft, jumped up there and talked a little bit about the release management stuff. Now, I've totally ignored this from the Visual Studio side, but one of the things that they did that I'm looking forward to kind of spending a little bit of time taking a look at is they took Visual Studio Online, they renamed it to Visual Studio Team Services, which makes sense because Visual Studio Online sounds like I'm using Visual Studio
in the web browser.
In the browser, and that's not what it was. Yep. But what they did is he spent a lot of time talking about the continuous deployment story. And you and I talked a little bit about this before we started recording the show today, but I'm looking at all these different tools and different services that are out there like Travis and Jenkins and Circle CI and CodeShip, and they really are designed to help you take a project that you're working on and take the code from wherever the code lives, whether it's GitHub or whatever, and pulling it in, do automated builds based if things are green, this sort of a workflow happens. And it's a lot of really cool, slick stuff. And what it seems that Microsoft has done is they not only Visual Studio Team Services not only allows you to use like a TFS style for doing your source control, but they also support Git, and you can even create these really cool workflows with specific events and different like scenarios. So you can, how we have a web.config where we have a debug and a build release. Now that's kind of doesn't really make sense to me. It's more that I have a scenario of deploying to dev or deploying to my integration or deploying to staging or deploying to pre-prod, prod, and prod. You can set up different workflows within this setup, and code can be coming from anywhere. It can be coming from TFS. It can be coming from TFS Online. It can be coming from GitHub or Bitbucket or any of those other ones. And it seems really extensible. So the part of the video that they did or during the keynote, it gave me just enough of a taste to go, this is kind of interesting with task management and issues and project and team management and then build process, enough to where I had completely written it off to where now I've got a little task to say, well, over the Thanksgiving holidays, I can't go
play with it.
Yeah, go take a play and find some more info where it actually walks through a little bit more information. So
yeah, I mean, it ties it all together, right? So for us, we're using Jira, GitHub, Travis for continuous integration. Gosh, what else? Those are the big ones anyway. And they're all different tools. They've all got different usernames and passwords. TFS seems to have come a long way in pulling it all together.
Yeah, they've done a really good job with it. I'm fairly impressed with it.
I need to go try set up a build on it like you and play around with it. That's when you really find out what it's like, right?
Yeah, I want to find what that whole automation stuff is like. And there was a cool, I know we're going to do a Docker show recently. Not recently. I know we're going to do one soon, but I know there's some cool stuff where I saw where, I have a project and I push it up to GitHub and then Travis sees the push. It goes through and does an entire build. Everything, once on a green build, it then takes notifies the Docker Hub. Docker Hub pulls everything in, rebuilds, does a brand new Docker image. That notifies something called Tootin. Tootin then goes out and ships the image out to all the AWS Docker hosts or the hosts that you have in Azure. They get the new image, so the next time they get spun up, they've got all the new image, the new code base. It's just when you automate it, you have less chance of a problem, and it's also a much easier way to see the entire workflow go through. So it's pretty slick.
Yeah. You've got to start that from early on, though.
Oh, yeah, you definitely do.
Hey, I've got a question. For you.
Shoot.
Why is the MicrosoftCloudShow.com website so slow?
Oh, yeah. That's my fault.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, I didn't have a whole, honestly, I didn't have a whole continuous deployment set up and everything. And I set one up. It's all running on Orchard 1.9.1. And they recently made some changes to the code base. Sorry, when I deployed everything, I did not turn caching on. And the reason why is because they have 3 different ways to do caching. And I didn't understand the differences. And I didn't know if there were any overlaps between them. So when I was at the MVP Summit, I actually found the guy that is in charge of Orchard for Microsoft, a guy named Sebastian Ross. And I cornered him. I got him to show, I showed him all the different cache options. He explained to me what the 3 different options are. There's 3 different options, and there's an A and B for each one. He explained what they are, why you'd use one over the other one, how, for the most part, there's only one that you want to use today if you're living inside of Azure. So after I talked to him, I did a little note to self, recorded a little brain dump, and I need to not only take the code base we have for our Orchard that we use to run my website, and the Cloud Show website. I need to go through and set up a new continuous deployment kind of story because they've got a whole build deployment thing to where you can do a pre-compiled build of Orchard. Right now, it's doing a just-in-time compilation, and there's no caching turned on. I need to go through and set it up to where let Azure do the pre-compiled build. I need to turn caching on, and I also promised to write an article on the orchardproject.net website explaining how the caching stuff works. But
Gotcha.
It's my fault because that Orchard is actually being used to run all the blogs.
Yeah, a bunch of sites.
Yeah, well, all the MSDN and TechNet blogs, over 800 blogs, and they're doing it with a single medium or large instance website over on Azure. And
yeah,
they have all their caching is set up. I didn't know this. All their caching is set up using the Azure cache, which uses a file-based provider, so that all the files are stored on a blob storage inside of Azure. And which is cool because with Azure websites, there's no website storage. They all use the same file system. And so once the sites are hit, things are cached to disk.
Yep.
And it's just blazing fast. You don't even touch the database.
Gotcha. Nice.
Honestly, I'm trying to do this the bad way. I want to go through and try the whole load testing that we have in Visual Studio Team Services. I want to hit our site.
Yeah.
I want to see what the performance is like.
Hey, I'll tell you how bad our performance is.
It sucks.
It's a house.
Yeah, I know. It's not good. It's my fault, man.
No worries. Hey, there's any ways up.
Well, yeah, that's damn sure. The only way down is to start getting yellow screens of death. So
Nice.
yellow screams of death.
All right, cool. Anything else you want to touch on before we finish up?
Yeah, there's new Office developer tools for Visual Studio 2015 that they just shipped in the last 2 or 3 days.
Oh, nice.
It's Update 1 for Visual Studio 2015, the Microsoft Office developer tools. All these links, just like everything else we've done in previous shows, it's all on Flipboard. We'll have a link there. You can grab the latest version at aka.ms/get latest Office dev tools. And you grab those, install a preview. I do find it kind of funny that they have an update for Farm and Sandbox solutions for SharePoint 2016 Beta 2, the project templates.
To make them work?
No, just so that you can actually target Farm solutions for SharePoint 2016 Beta 2.
I see.
As much as they're trying to get us to go away from those, I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah. There's going to be people doing that for a long time.
Yeah, there really are.
Might as well not leave them dead in the water with old tools, right?
Yeah. Hey, let me give you a smattering of 2 or 3 other things really quick that I think are going to be interesting. Azure PowerShell 1.0 shipped. So that's out there for like a bunch of ARM related stuff. There's also, I don't know if you've seen this. This is awesome. Microsoft has shipped the Azure Storage Explorer and its cross-platform built on Electron.
Oh.
It works on a Mac and it works on Windows.
Hooray. Finally.
No, finally. It's pretty cool. I'm curious to see how they do it too, because I've used it. It's interesting how you log in using your Azure AD account and it automatically sees all your storage accounts and it just pulls them all into the product. So it's done really, really well. I think you can go get it from, if you go to a search for Azure Storage Explorer, it's not the one on Codeplex. It's
not the first one.
I think it's storageexplorer.com. I think is what is the site. There's a link to the post inside of Flipboard. And what was the other thing I wanted to mention? There's a cool thing with Minecraft called Dockercraft where you can actually...
Oh, that is awesome.
You can build containers and they show up as like Minecraft things. And on the wall of the thing in Minecraft, it shows like the CPU and the performance and everything. You can go in and you can flip the switches to turn them on, release them, and they disappear.
Yeah.
It's a cool visualization.
I totally want to just get that going just because I can.
I want to do that on Raspberry Pis, and then I'd love to hook it up with something like to Twitter and see like a whole like just landscape of containers everywhere.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It would be pretty cool. I think my son would lose his mind if he saw that. It'd be pretty sweet.
I want to see whales in containers, but anyway.
Toads.
And I think that's about it. That's all the stuff I got this week.
Excellent. Well, that was good catch up and good summary of the news and things like that.
Yeah, man.
And we've got more in store, so tune in next week.
Absolutely, yeah. So by the time this ships, hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving holiday. But CJ, I know that you're an invader of our country, so
invader. I like that.
Do you celebrate Thanksgiving?
We do.
Because it's a day off of work, or because you actually believe in it? I'm kidding.
I actually think it's the perfect holiday. It's a great holiday. And the reason I say that is I've only been here, I think, just over 8 years or so. And we didn't celebrate it in New Zealand. It's not a holiday back there. And we really like it because, well, first up, it's a bit different for us because we don't have family here. So we get together with all of the other expat Kiwis and others that also don't have other families here. And we sort of do this get together of people. But I really like it as a holiday because it just seems to be the least commercialized holiday there is.
You know why that is, right?
Because Christmas is right around the bend and shopping right the day after.
Yeah, because all these damn vendors are going through. Yeah. Are all starting to do their Black Friday sales on Thursday.
It's true, but what I mean is like you're not expected to like buy presents for other people.
No, just food.
Just food. Eat, drink, and be merry.
I love it, man. It's hanging out with family. It's eating, it's drinking, and it's watching football.
Right.
I love that.
I'm more and more into the football aspect of things now, so I've got even more to look forward to. Oh, yeah, I went to the Seahawks game on Sunday, and we won against the 49ers for a change, so that was, or I should say, we won for a change, which was nice. So, maybe I'll watch the football after this Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, Marshawn Lynch sucks. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Go Rolls. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a fantasy football hater, but anyway.
That's why I like Thanksgiving. Plus, it's a great time just to reflect, and we're very lucky for the lives we live, and it's a nice time to sit back and think about that a little. Yeah, I'm with you. It's my favorite holiday. I love the time of year. I wish it was colder for us here in Florida. It's in the 50s today, but it's going to warm up to the 70s by Thursday. So
It's a good holiday. It's good fun.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. And I guess we will see everybody next week.
Yes, likewise. Have a good one.
Yeah, man. You too.
If you have a question for us, go to microsoftcloudshow.com/questions, where you can submit it as text or record it as a WAV or MP3 and provide a link so we can play your question on the show. You can subscribe to us in iTunes by searching for Microsoft Cloud Show or via RSS at microsoftcloudshow.com, where you'll also find a full transcript and show notes of each episode. You can also find us on Facebook searching for Microsoft Cloud Show or on Twitter at MS Cloud Show. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.